Well, but see, the question here, though, is, though, but it's not a question of just money. It's a question of what is right and what is wrong. If Trump is willing to pay this money, are you willing to say that Trump is wrong on this issue?
Well, I don't know if the president was involved in it or not.
He's willing to pay the money.
Let me just read to you what
Cornel West went on Abby Phillips' show on CNN to go up against a panel that included MAGA far-right stooge Scott Jennings. If you're not familiar with Scott Jennings, he's one of the biggest MAGA creeps on television. We're going to take a look at these clips of Cornel West, Scott Jennings, and others on CNN. I'm going to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Tonight, settlement shock. The Trump administration has agreed to pay nearly $5 million to the family of Ashli Babbitt. She is the MAGA rioter who was shot and killed by police after she breached the Capitol on January 6th. The officer who was involved was later cleared of criminal wrongdoing. In a statement today, the Capitol Police Chief said he is disappointed with the settlement and that it, quote, sends a chilling message to law enforcement nationwide, especially to those with a protective mission like ours. Joining us in our fifth seat at the table is Harry Dunn, a former U.S. Capitol Police officer who was there on January 6th. Harry, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Look, this is unbelievable in a way, especially if you were there. We covered it. To see this moment rewarded with a $5 million settlement, when we checked, we tried to see, were there officers who were injured, those who died as a result of their injuries or other aspects of their service on January 6th? Did they get anything? No settlements for those folks.
Not even money, but just even an acknowledgement. I'm just thinking about Brian Sicknick. His mother still waiting for a call from the president. Look, it's under no circumstances, should anybody's death be celebrated or somebody lost their daughter, somebody lost a sister, a mother, and it's unfortunate that somebody lost their life there. But what message does it send that an individual, if she lived, she would have been charged. She would have been charged with a crime. She would have been a criminal. What message does that send out there to not just everyday citizens, but to people who, other criminals at the Capitol who may have been sprayed by police or may have been hit by police? Do they get to sue and now be rewarded because their record's clean with Donald Trump pardoning them?
Yeah, I mean, those are important sort of downstream effects of all this. I mean, does this open the door, Scott, to all these other people suing the police officers that they assaulted?
Yeah, I mean, he raises legitimate questions. I mean, it's a tragic situation because someone died. And it's also a tragic situation because brave police officers were put in harm's way. I'm very defensive of police officers. I back the blue. I think police officers protect us and deserve our support and our admiration. So that's my view.
Now, Scott Jennings is trying to thread the needle here because he is running for office. So he doesn't want to upset police too much because he's going to go with the back the blue thing. But he also doesn't want to upset people who side with the January 6th rioters, which is most of MAGA. And just think about this. I remember seeing all of that play out on television that day. And I thought to myself, anyone who supports this does not believe in America, at least not the America that I grew up believing in. And I know there are lots of problems with our country and there's lots of problems with our country's past. But to me, the vast majority of Americans, I would have thought, would not support an angry mob smashing windows out at the Capitol, fighting with police, going inside the Capitol and vandalizing it. To me, I always would have thought that would be a tiny percent of people in our country that support that. But instead, we have millions of people who found that to be perfectly okay. And Scott Jennings, anytime January 6th is brought up, typically on Abby Phillips' show, he always wants to downplay it when you have a Democrat or a progressive person talking about the crimes of that day. Oh, he wants to talk over them and try to downplay it. But the fact of the matter is this was a woman who was doing criminal acts, and sadly she got killed by police instead of just being arrested and taken in. But even if she had been arrested, Donald Trump probably would have pardoned her. To me, that is just an upside down world that we're currently living in.
Should she get the settlement?
This should have never happened. On the settlement, look, they were asking for 30. They got 5. I don't know all the facts internally. I've just seen the reporting about whether they thought maybe a jury would side with her. I don't know.
But isn't this?
But I don't. So it's hard for me to know what facts they were looking at internally about what litigation might have produced. But it is in my opinion, a tragic situation for everyone. The person who died, the police officer who was involved, who by the way was vindicated in internal reports and internal investigations.
Well, that's the point that I'm going to make. So it was a wrongful death settlement. What was wrong then? If he wasn't charged, he was cleared in multiple investigations. What was wrong?
I am a supporter of the police, but my support of the police doesn't only occur on January 6th. Are we not aware that these kind of cases happen all the time? In fact, New York City just settled a $13 million case after George Floyd protest. People that assaulted police officers here in New York City got $13.5 million.
What does that make it okay? We don't need whataboutisms right now.
No, I'm not whataboutism.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm not a January 6th, I wish I was there guy. I'm not that at all. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying we should be clear that people who are the victims of police mistreatment have a right to sue. This sort of thing does happen all the time. Cornel, you are routinely.
I think that's the question. Is she a victim of police mistreatment?
People who are the victims of a police shooting, right or wrong, have a right to sue in this country.
Okay, but is she a victim of police mistreatment?
Exactly.
According to the settlement, she is.
Well, but see, the question here, though, but it's not a question of just money. It's a question of what is right and what is wrong. If Trump is willing to pay this money, are you willing to say that Trump is wrong on this issue?
Well, I don't know if the president was involved in it or not.
He's willing to pay the money.
Let me just read to you what he said about.
Because let me just say this.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is it's hard for us to be able to generate the kind of bonds of trust that we must have if people are not willing to stand on principle and integrity as opposed to just being on one team and being hard on the other team and somebody else on the other team being hard on the other team. Right and wrong cuts deeper than the team.
But
She's talking about what's right and what's wrong.
Professor West, does she have the right to sue?
She didn't sue because
sure, she has the right to sue. Of course she has the right to sue.
Is she justified doing it?
She has the right to do it, and it goes through a process, and we see whether it's right or whether it's wrong.
No, she wasn't justified. No, what do you mean? Wrongful death is what she sued, or her state sued for.
But people can sue for anything and be wrong,
I understand that, but I'm saying he was cleared in those investigations.
Right.
So what was wrongful? An investigation by the FBI and Capitol Police and Metropolitan Police turned up zero wrongdoing.
No evidence.
So what is wrongful about this settlement?
There's another case here in New York where.
And Cornel West and the former Capitol police officer are exactly right. Yeah, people can sue for all kinds of things. Donald Trump, look at all the lawsuits that he has filed, and some he wins on and some he doesn't. He's an incredibly litigious person. People can sue for all kinds of things. That doesn't mean, and even if they win, that doesn't mean it's right. Cornel West talking about the team is spot on. That's so much of what our politics consists of right now is team red, team blue, and people are going to dig in to support whatever their team is, whether it's right or if it's wrong. I don't know how anybody can look at what happened with Ashli Babbitt and say that that officer wasn't acting in self-defense and trying to protect those members of Congress from a woman who was part of an angry mob and smashing out windows to get to people. That's a far cry from what the one guy is bringing up here, where cities and municipalities have to pay out for cops who kill unarmed people or beat up unarmed people who aren't doing anything violent, who aren't trying to hurt anyone. That's a completely different scenario. So when Cornel West says here to Scott Jennings, are you just going to be on the team, or are you going to be on the side of what's right, what's correct, what's moral? He is spot on.
An officer was, the shooting was found to have been done by the book. The guy's name was Ramarley Grant. I don't think he should die. I don't want the guy to die. The police officer was not charged. It was done by the patrol guide of the NYPD. And that guy got $4 million, okay? I'm against massive police settlements for victims when the officer is not at fault. I'm with you on this. I just don't know why we're so shocked and appalled when this family, who was the victim of a police shooting, I don't think she should have died.
It happened one of the darkest days in our American history.
I'll tell you why. Can I just...
Does she deserve to die?
No. Can I tell you why, though? Yeah. Because this insurrection was perpetuated by the same person whose administration settled this case. So it's not like there was some jury or there was some sort of independent body that gave her this money. This money was given to her by the man who even Scott Jennings at one point said incited this insurrection. His name is Donald Trump.
No,
Let me
it's coming from taxpayers.
Well,
it is
but
Donald
Trump
should pay his.
Donald Trump is the person who allowed that to happen.
And he has been on this issue for a long time. Here's what he said about the officer, actually, who shot Ashli Babbitt. He said the police officer thug who had a very checkered past to begin with was not just doing his job when he shot and killed great patriot Ashli Babbitt at point blank range. And then he says that she was murdered. He called the officer a thug who was there protecting members of Congress, Democrat and Republican. The thing about the Ashli Babbitt situation is that we actually saw it. We saw the tape of it. We saw that they were trying to break into the chambers where lawmakers were hiding for their lives.
That's right.
Okay? That happened because he was protecting our elected leaders. That is not within question here.
Republicans and Democrats.
Here in New York, routinely, Democratic elected officials routinely call the members of the NYPD thugs. Why do we always treat this one incident with a different lens than the broader issue of the police being assaulted?
Assault on law enforcement in the history of the United States.
It probably isn't. It probably isn't.
But Joe, is it really being?
I'm not trying to one up you there.
Is it really being treated with a different lens, except by the people who are running for office on a back the blue platform?
You're talking to me.
That's what I'm saying. I think that on January 7th, there was almost unanimity that this was an awful day, that the people who were involved in it should be prosecuted. Almost everybody agreed with that. The only reason that changed is because Donald Trump wanted it to change. And because Donald Trump was on the other side of that issue, all the back the blue people have changed their stance. I agree with you that people should be consistent, but I think the lack of consistency is not where you think it is.
I think there were definitely people who were completely overcharged for their participation. I think people that assaulted police officers on video, on camera, easily provable, should be punished and should spend time in jail. I'm consistent. Right? I said the same thing last segment when we were talking about the Congresswoman. I'm saying the same thing this segment.
If you were in the Oval Office, I think maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But Donald Trump is in the Oval Office. He has pardoned all of these people, including the ones who assaulted police officers. And now his Justice Department has handed down a $5 million settlement in this case.
So with the guy talking about why is there such a big deal being made of this case, a big deal has been made of this case because an entire political movement, MAGA, led by their God King, Donald Trump, has turned this into a huge deal. And like Abby Phillip is saying there, Donald Trump called this police officer a thug, this was an instance of a police officer doing his job, trying to protect those members of Congress. This wasn't an example of a police officer killing some unarmed person that was no threat to anybody that they pulled over in a traffic stop and then killed them. These are very, very separate, different issues. But this is the problem that MAGA has right now. They're back the blue with an asterisk. It's back the blue when it's the blue that's on our side. If it's blue that doesn't agree with Donald Trump completely and trying to overthrow the government, then we don't back those blue. It's the same thing that they do with the military. You can't ever criticize anybody was in the military or is in the military, and we respect your service. Thank you for your service. Unless you're a liberal, unless you're a progressive, unless you're a Democrat, then we can say whatever we want about you because we don't really believe in that institution. MAGA, that is. And, for the Republican here on the panel talking about, well, she was a victim of the police. Yes, as the Capitol Hill police officer said, she was someone's daughter, she was someone's sister, and that aspect of it is sad. But would you say the same thing if somebody robbed a bank and the police shot that person who was trying to rob the bank or breaking into someone's home and that person got killed? Yes, they would still be someone's brother or sister or son or daughter, but that doesn't make it wrong what the police did by stopping them. This was a person in Ashli Babbitt who was in the process of committing a crime, a pretty serious crime. And sadly, the police officer shot her. But I don't know why this Republican, well, I know why, because he's a Republican, but he's trying to conflate different instances of police officers killing people. There's a difference between an innocent person being killed and a person committing a crime being killed.
I think the sad thing is when you have larger patterns of might makes right, of Pontius Pilate over Jesus, of Thrasymachus over Socrates, people figure it's all transaction, it's all manipulation, it's all the survival of the slickest. Once you have that dominant in your society, after a while, it doesn't make any difference what's on the books because nobody is taking the book seriously anyway. Rule of law doesn't mean that much. Constitution doesn't mean that much. Quality relations doesn't mean that much.
Harry,
Conversations don't mean that.
Do you feel that way?
Power.
The rule of law has less meaning now?
Last week being National Police Week, the White House tweeted whatever it is. We support and will never betray our men and women in law. Which ones? The ones that voted for you? Like this is about right and wrong. And like you could turn off all the talking heads. You can turn off all the news, everybody's opinion about January 6th. Hell, watch it on mute. Just press play. Just press play. Everybody watched and had a front row seat to watch what happened with Ashli Babbitt, to watch what happened to everybody in the Capitol that day. You don't need anybody's opinion. Just press play. And anybody that can side with those individuals, they got the nerve to call themselves patriots, and they were right. They're attempting to rewrite what happened that day, and that continues with Donald Trump, with this Justice Department awarding Ashli Babbitt's family $5 million. That is coming from taxpayer money. Ashli Babbitt wouldn't have been there if Donald Trump would have accepted that the election was not stolen. So maybe Donald Trump should pay that $5 million himself instead of the American people.
Well, Harry, whenever I see you, I always say thank you for your heroism that day and for your service. Thank you for being on the show today.
When Cornel West there said survival of the slickest, that may be as good a line as I've heard from anyone to describe Donald Trump. Spot on from Cornel West. But again, this is an issue where it should be, 95% of Americans are on the same side with this. Yes, you can say it was sad that Ashli Babbitt died that day, but you can also say she was committing a crime. She was part of a mob. That doesn't necessarily mean that she deserved to lose her life, but she was endangering other people's lives. And sadly, she was killed by police. But to try to spin this and make her into some kind of a martyr, like Donald Trump and MAGA has done, is obscene. And we're just in an upside down world, a backward world, where we have a scumbag like Donald Trump running the country and people believing that people who tried to overthrow the government were patriots. It's absolute insanity. But let me know what you think about this. Do you agree with Cornel West and some of the other people on the panel? Or do you agree with the Scott Jennings MAGA side where Ashli Babbitt is a hero and the January 6 rioters and insurrectionists are heroes? I know which side I'm on. Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.